What if I told you that there's a psychological pattern so consistent, so predictable, that it shows up in relationship after relationship, regardless of who's involved or what the circumstances are? A pattern that creates chronic dissatisfaction, even when everything seems perfect on paper? I'm about to reveal something that will completely change how you understand relationship conflicts, complaints, and that nagging feeling that nothing you do is ever quite enough. This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about understanding human psychology so deeply that you can finally break free from cycles that have been destroying relationships for generations. The insight I'm sharing today comes from observing thousands of relationships, studying behavioral patterns, and recognizing something that therapists, relationship experts, and couples themselves often miss. Sometimes the problem isn't what's happening between two people. It's what's happening inside one person's mind, running like background software they don't even know exists. Here's what sparked this revelation. I started noticing a phrase that came up again and again when talking to people in struggling relationships. Nothing I do is ever good enough. You bring flowers, wrong color. Plan a romantic dinner, wrong restaurant. Help with household tasks. You're doing it wrong. Don't help, you're inconsiderate. Work extra hours to provide. You're never home. Spend more time at home, you lack ambition. This pattern of total dissatisfaction, this comprehensive criticism of everything someone does or doesn't do, led me to a startling realization. What if the dissatisfaction isn't actually about the actions at all? What if it's a pre-existing condition that would manifest regardless of circumstances? That question opened up a rabbit hole of psychology, neuroscience, and human behavior that revealed something profound about how our minds work, how childhood shapes us, and why some people seem incapable of contentment no matter how good their life becomes. Let's start with something most people don't realize. Research shows that approximately 50% of personality traits, including our tendency toward optimism or pessimism, are hereditary. This means some people are literally born with brain chemistry that predisposes them to see the negative in everything. Think about this for a moment. Just like having brown eyes or being left-handed, some individuals have a genetic baseline that defaults to dissatisfaction. Their normal state is complaint. Their resting position is unhappy. I've observed this pattern across multiple generations and families. Grandmother chronically unhappy, mother chronically unhappy, daughter following the same pattern. 3 generations who could win the lottery, live in paradise and still find something wrong, because their brains are wired to focus on what's missing rather than what's present. This isn't a choice or a character flaw. It's neuroscience. Some brains produce less serotonin, process dopamine differently, or have overactive stress responses. Without conscious effort to rewire these patterns through therapy, medication, or intensive personal work, these individuals remain in a permanent state of not enough, regardless of external circumstances. Understanding this changes everything. It means that chronic dissatisfaction often has nothing to do with what's actually happening in someone's life, and everything to do with how their brain processes reality. But genetics is just the foundation. The real damage often comes from childhood programming that runs so deep. People don't even realize they're operating from these scripts. I've identified 2 primary childhood patterns that create adult relationship dissatisfaction. Pattern 1, problematic father relationships. When someone grows up with an absent, abusive, or emotionally unavailable father, they often develop an unconscious belief that disappointment is inevitable in relationships. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where they either choose disappointing partners or become so impossible to please that even good partners become disappointing, trying to meet impossible standards. Pattern 2, modeling maternal dissatisfaction. Even more common is watching a chronically dissatisfied mother who complained constantly, criticized everything, and was never happy with what she had. The child absorbs this like a sponge, thinking this is normal behavior. This is how relationships work. This is what love looks like. By adulthood, this programming runs so deep they don't realize they're operating their parents' software. They find themselves saying the exact words their mother said, making the same complaints, creating the same miserable atmosphere because that's what feels familiar. Here's the crucial insight. Humans choose familiar over happy every single time, unless they become conscious about it. The brain interprets familiar patterns as safe, even when those patterns are destructive. Modern culture has created an unprecedented problem. The gap between expectations and reality has never been wider. We're raised on fairy tales. Romantic comedies and social media highlight reels that create impossible standards for what relationships and life should be. People enter relationships expecting constant romance, adventure, and emotional fulfillment. Then reality hits: bills, chores, routine, and normal human imperfections. Social media has amplified this exponentially. Everyone now has a window into thousands of curated lives, comparing their behind-the-scenes reality to everyone else's highlight reel. She sees colleagues' anniversary gift, friends' renovation, neighbor's vacation, and each becomes evidence of her own life's inadequacy. This creates what I call comparison poisoning, a permanent state of feeling less than, feeling cheated, feeling like everyone else got the good life while she got stuck with ordinary reality. I knew someone who had everything: loving partner, beautiful home, successful career, but was miserable because her social media feed was full of engagement announcements, baby announcements, promotion announcements. Each post felt like evidence that she had chosen wrong, settled for less, missed out on more. The devaluation mechanism kicks in here too. The moment something becomes hers, it loses value. When single, she wanted a relationship. Got the relationship, now she wants marriage. Got married, now she wants a different kind of partner. This isn't about the actual partner or circumstances. It's a psychological pattern where possession diminishes perceived value. Here's perhaps the most disturbing pattern I've observed. For many people, unhappiness has become an identity. They bond with others through complaining. They get attention through being victims. They avoid responsibility by blaming dissatisfaction on external factors. They've been unhappy so long, they don't know who they would be if they were actually content. This creates a strange dynamic where attempts to create happiness actually make things worse. You solve one problem, they find another. You meet one need, they develop a new one. You address one complaint, they create another, because the unhappiness isn't about the problems, it's about maintaining a familiar emotional state. I've watched people in genuinely good relationships create problems from nothing because peace feels wrong, stability feels suspicious, happiness feels temporary. They're so convinced that contentment is impossible that they make it impossible. The therapy culture has sometimes made this worse by pathologizing everything and encouraging people to see trauma everywhere, rather than learning resilience, gratitude, and personal responsibility. Some develop what I call therapeutic narcissism, endless focus on their wounds and healing journey, without awareness of how their chronic dissatisfaction affects everyone around them. Many people unconsciously sabotage their own happiness through what I call the authenticity trap. They present a false version of themselves to attract and keep a partner, appearing easygoing when high maintenance, agreeable when controlling, content when chronically dissatisfied. After commitment, when the mask inevitably comes off, they're angry about having to pretend and simultaneously angry at their partner for not seeing through the performance. This creates resentment from both sides and destroys the foundation of genuine connection. The manipulation and testing that often happens unconsciously creates its own unhappiness. Testing boundaries to feel secure creates conflict. Manipulating to get needs met destroys trust. Creating drama to feel intensity exhausts everyone. They literally create the conditions for their own unhappiness while believing they're trying to achieve happiness. There's also the biological clock factor that adds another layer of complexity. The limited window for certain life experiences creates underlying anxiety that poisons present happiness. People are either rushing toward milestones and stressed about the pressure, or they've achieved milestones that didn't fulfill them as expected, or they've missed milestones and are grieving what they'll never have. Understanding these patterns doesn't automatically solve them, but awareness is the first step toward change. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, the solution exists, but it requires what most people won't do: genuine self-reflection, taking responsibility, adjusting expectations to match reality, practicing gratitude and accepting imperfection. If you're with someone caught in these patterns, understand that their dissatisfaction likely isn't about you or your relationship. It's about internal programming that only they can change. The most important question to ask: Was this person genuinely happy before our relationship? If they have a pattern of chronic dissatisfaction across multiple areas of life, your love, efforts, and presence cannot cure what needs to be healed from within. Real happiness in relationships is possible, but it starts with each person taking responsibility for their own emotional state and breaking the unconscious patterns that sabotage love. Only then can two people create something beautiful together, instead of one person trying desperately to fill a hole that can only be filled from within. The choice is yours. Continue the patterns, or start the work of genuine change.